Hello everyone, my name is Lisa and I'm the Viet Vegan because I'm Viet and I'm vegan, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 books of 2020. If you've watched my last video, you have heard my spiel about how I got back into reading after like a decade and a half of not reading. God, I am old. For the record, I'm 30. I just turned 30 this year. Embracing my 30s, you know, I'm liking that my age internally is matching my age externally now. So I talk about the books that I've been reading, the kind of genres that I've been reading, how I've been reading in my last video, so I'll link it in the corner for you to check out if you would like. But this video is just about my top 10 books. And of course, I don't really have any of them physically to hold because I read most of my books on an e-reader. Starting from number 10. My 10th favorite book this year was Normal People by Sally Rooney. My friend Laura recommended it to me. At first, I hated the writing style because it was written all without punctuation, which drove me bonkers. If you didn't know, my degree is in translation. So I spent 4 years of my life in post-secondary education, basically learning the nitty-gritty of grammar, and having a book just sort of like throw all of that to the wind for the sake of art was a bit jarring. But once I got over the complete lack of punctuation, I couldn't help but get really invested in the characters. I don't particularly think that either characters are good people necessarily. They're not bad people, they just make poor decisions. But it was just so cathartic, I think, to see these characters, get to know these characters and be like, oh my God, I know you. I know the people who are like you. I am like you sometimes with some of the silly decisions that they make. And it was just like a very stark look at humanity and being a young adult and finding yourself in toxic relationships or like toxic cycles, either succumbing to them or just breaking out of them. So I found it like a really strong, compelling story, and I really enjoyed it. It's a bit sexy in some spots, just a heads up. I've been told that it's a series. I've seen it on CBC Gem. Some people told me I think it's on Hulu. We don't have Hulu here, but I've been meaning to watch it. I will probably inform you on Instagram when I do watch it. Normal People, Sally Rooney. That's like, I really enjoyed it. It's not for everyone, that's for sure, but it is a very reflective and emotional book, and I think that that's why it resonated with me so strongly. The next book, number 9 on my list, is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I was not expecting this book to hit me as hard as it did. Obviously, as someone who's vegan, I believe a lot in sustainability and the earth and understanding, you know, how what I do impacts the earth. And I found, because of Delia Owens' background in zoology and her extensive knowledge of biology, her world that she described was just so rich and so beautiful and so like ecologically nerdy that it was just also like a really strong, compelling story that was just so vindicating by the ending. If you've read that book, you know exactly what I mean. It's just like, it was such like it's a good story. The characters are so heartbreakingly, you just like empathize so strongly for them. It's a really, really good read. I listened to this as an audiobook and I loved it. It was just so good. I couldn't stop listening. Normally with audiobooks, I like pause it when I like listen in the shower or when I'm doing dishes or just when I'm doing whatever. But I found myself just like making myself do things so that I could continue listening to the book. So I was like cleaning a bunch. I was just like sitting there just listening. It was really good. Really, really good. The next book, number 8 on my list, is Akata Witch. I read this recently for my book club with some friends here in Toronto. A lot of people have described Akata Witch as something very similar to a Nigerian Harry Potter, which I understand, but I feel like they're also super, super different. It is like outcast child. A lot of people didn't expect a lot of this person, and then they found themselves in this magical world that existed within their own world. And you know, it turns out they're very powerful, I see a lot of similarities with Harry Potter, but it's very different. And I love the world. I'm so in love with like the world that Nnedi Okorafor built. And with my diversification of voices in my social feeds, it's just really cool to like learn more about Nigerian culture or Ghanaian culture or West African culture, and seeing that on paper or like seeing that in this world that I have fallen in love with. My favorite part about this world is that knowledge equals currency. And I think that is so beautiful and so cool and so radical. And of course, in every system of power and currency, there will always be abuse of that power. And I think that that's something that's interesting to think about. I just found the story and the world and the characters very compelling. It is unfortunate that they keep pairing people off, but that's just like YA, I feel like. I believe Akata Witch is a YA novel, and there is a second book in the series, which I'm very excited to read. I have it on hold, so I think I'll be reading that in the new year. Number 7 on my list is a nonfiction book by Desmond Cole. It's called The Skin We're In. It's written by a Black journalist here in Toronto, and he's like a journalist and activist, and he used to work for the Toronto Star. And I think that is such a really impactful, concise, and well-written and well-researched book about racial inequality in Canada, and not just racial inequality, but in terms of identity and queer politics that happened in Canada. He delves into the BLM movement in 2016 with Pride and how that affected all of that. He talks about like the history of racial justice. He talks about Indigenous justice and like the history of Indigenous wildness that is here in Canada, which a lot of people don't talk about. It's just like a really, really good book, and it's really well written. His method of research and sense of justice reminds me a lot of Philip DeFranco, who is not like a journalist, but I feel like Philip DeFranco applies a lot of the similar ethics and research into his videos. Really, really recommend The Skin We're In. It's a good book. Number, is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why did I only wrote 9 books down. Dang it! I feel so silly now. Beans. All right, whatever. The next book up on my list is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This is one of those books that just took all of my racial education and Black history knowledge and understanding of intersectionality compiled into one, and just like packed all of the micro aggressions and issues all into like one book and one thing. And she just laid it all out there and didn't like beat you over the head in terms of like, this is what this microaggression is, or this is what this microaggression is. The events just happened, and you see it through the perspective of the main character, who is Black, and also see from the perspective of this like white woman who thinks that she's super woke and thinks that she's like, you know, she has a Black best friend, and like, you know, she thinks that she does all these things that are for anti-racism. But it's just like a very vindicating book, and I just feel like everyone got what they deserved in the end. And I think that like it was just like really, really interesting to see all these different aspects of my anti-racism education in play. It was just a really good book. And I think that was one of the first books that I read on my ebook. No, actually the first one was Normal People. Such a Fun Age was the second book that I read on the ebook. And it was just like, I just like kept clicking through. I was like, next page, next page, next page. I just want to know what happens. A page turner. That's what it's called. But anyway, my next book up on my list is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I feel like everyone read this book this year. It was like one of the top books of 2020. A really, really mysterious and interesting story. Again, another accumulation of all of the anti-racism education that I've been doing this year. And it was just really interesting. I love the queer representation in it. I love the different perspectives. I just think it's like well written and mysterious and interesting. And I just really, really enjoyed it. The next 3 that I'm going to be recommending are all series. Maybe that's why I didn't write down 10. It's because like these next 3 are really just series. Actually, no, I have one book, I guess, one series that goes above all the other ones. Number 4 on my list is A Study in Scarlet Woman by Sherry Thomas, and it is a Lady Sherlock series, so it's a gender bend of Sherlock Holmes. I just found it so fun. It's like historical fiction, it's a gender bend, it really dives into like gender and making you sort of like look at gender inequality back in that time, as well as like making you think about it now. I really like the story and the character of Sherlock Holmes. I find it really compelling and really fun, and the villain of the week sort of storytelling of it is really fun. I'm on book 5. Yeah, I think I read the most recent one, which is Murder on Cold Street. It's a good time. Highly recommend the whole series so far. Sherry Thomas is a Harlequin romance writer, I think. When I look at all the other covers that she's ever done, they're like a lot of Harlequin romance kind of type stuff. So there are a lot of romantic themes in Lady Sherlock, which I enjoy, but I just really enjoyed the series. The only thing I don't like is that it's a bit fat phobic, which is like, it is of the era, but she just has a lot of like diet talk, like certain food talk that I just don't really agree with, and that it is triggering, but like I'm okay with it just because like I've been able to like dissociate from it or just sort of ignore it. But it's something worth talking about. That's like the only thing I dislike about the series, but like I love pretty much everything else. Number 3 is A Murder in Time. It's a historical fiction, but it's like obviously different from the Sherry Thomas Lady Sherlock series in the sense that the main character, Kendra Donovan, is an FBI agent in present time, but she gets warped back into the 1800s. And so she is like, it is that very stark, like, I'm living in a time where women have no rights to anything. And it's just really interesting, and I really like it. There is romance in it, but it is like finding a serial killer sort of situation. And I love those kinds of crime investigation TV shows like Bones, Criminal Minds, CSI, all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed reading it in book form, and I really like the character Kendra Donovan. So I'm on the 3rd book. I just finished Caught in Time, and I'm on the 3rd one. Highly recommend that series. Number 2 on my list is The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. That was the first book from my book club that I have with my best friends. I read the first one and I had a lot of feelings about it. I was like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. What is this? Why is this character doing this? This makes no sense. And it was just like a lot of world building. But once I read the 2nd and 3rd book, all of the issues that I had in the first book were resolved by the end. And it was like a very moment. It was just very satisfying. They are long books and it is a very rich, incredible world. But again, it talks about anti-racism in a different spin, and it's just like a really, really incredible world. There is a similar term in the book to the N-word in real life, and it talks about some people saying that word and reclaiming that word, and some people using that word as like an insult, and just like how that makes the character feel and what it means in the world. It's just like really, really interesting, and the world is just so incredible. So I love the 5th season as a series, the Broken Earth series. The first book is just like a lot of stuff going on, but I loved it, and I burned through all 3 books really, really quickly because I was like, I must know what happens. I don't understand. There's queer representation in it. There's lots of racial representation in it. It's just like, it's a good book. It's really cool. Highly recommend. Now we're on to number 1. Is this cheating? It's the series, not necessarily the book. It's like a 7 book or 8 book series. I can't remember because it's all on ebook. So like I just kept reading and I was like, next. But I finished the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And then I also read the Assassin's Blade, or like the pre-series or the prequel to that series. And what an incredible world. It's like all the things that I love about fantasy, but flipped on its head. The gender tropes are different. Sexuality is different. It's more of a focus on like friendship versus necessarily love. And like love is a part of it. There's a lot of love arcs in it, but I just like really like the characters. I really like the world. I really like everything about it because it's like all of my favorite things about fantasy without the crappy patriarchy in it, which is just, it's just awesome. So, I just love Sarah J. Maas so much as an author. I just love the worlds that she builds. And I just started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'm on the 2nd book now. I just downloaded it and I'm very excited to read it. I'm gonna read it after this. It's gonna be a great time. I guess that's like my true number 1. I was gonna say the 5th season is my number 1, but I just loved Throne of Glass so much. I probably could be judged for my taste in books because a lot of them are YA, a lot of them are fantasy, a lot of them have like a lot of romance themes in them, but I just found it like really fun. Like it's just, reading for me now is like an escape, a way for me to consume art without necessarily just like going to a museum or necessarily watching a show. It's just self-care for me to be engrossed in a book and just spending time reading. It's a good time. Who doesn't love being cozy in a fun, aesthetic, cozy nook, which I have started to outfit with lots of things. I'm gonna put like a lamp, I think, here to read. I'm surrounded by all my plants. I have new furniture. This is an ottoman. I got this one off Facebook Marketplace. It's just a great time. And like, I love reading beside Eddie. He'll either read beside me in bed or he'll be looking at memes. Also, sometimes there's like a couch right here. So sometimes he'll be lying on the couch reading and I'll be reading in my chair, and it's just a great time. We have music going on. It's just, I've really enjoyed reading, and I've really enjoyed reading with Eddie. Those are my top 10 books for 2020. My goals next year are to read, I think, 100 books. I think I can do it. I read 50 books in like 2 months, so I feel like I can probably read 100 books in a year. Probably. We'll see. Yeah, I would love your book recommendations if you have any based on the books that I mentioned here. You can check out my Storygraph. I'm the Viet Vegan there, and you can see the books that I have on my TBR and books that I've read already if you want. If you want to join my book club on Discord, we're reading My Sister the Serial Killer. I've heard so many good things about that book, so I was like, you know what? Fine. We're gonna do it. We're gonna read it. It's gonna be a good time. I would love to know what your top fave books were this year. Give me your top 3 in the comments. I would love to know. And if there's any books that I should be reading and that I should add to my TBR, I would love that. Obviously, I'm not a booktuber. I don't know how many book related videos I'll be making, but I might pepper in more book content throughout the year. Who knows? 2021, ripe with possibilities. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know if you do. If you did, give it a little likey. And subscribe if you like hearing me ramble about things that I enjoy, including food and books and shows. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a delicious day. Bye.